Okay, and we are back. So I broke for lunch for a bit and chilled out, ate, and had some more coffee, made some more coffee. And I built up a spacecraft, a configuration that I have long enjoyed using in KSP-1. This is a asparagus configuration for those of you who know the name. I am not sure that KSP-2 gets the delta V's right. In fact, I am absolutely sure it does not. So, look at what's going on here. So when we launch, all of our engines are going to fire. So we have the thrust from all 7 engines. And we have fuel for them all. But you notice that we've got these fuel ducts down at the bottom. So, basically, this tank and its sibling are not only feeding this bell, but they will be refueling through this duct the next one over. So this one will stay full as long as we have fuel here. We're going to pass it along. Same thing from here to here. This guy will get its fuel from both of these. Itself, directly, and through the duct from the other one. And as long as it has fuel here, it will send it along to the third one. Third one, well, this guy's fueled by all of these. But same as the other ones, it will send via duct back to the middle. Okay, so what happens? Essentially, these two tanks, the directly opposed ones here and here, are going to be fueling all 7 of the rockets. And I'm going to go through that pretty fast. And I actually have my spreadsheet up showing that stage. I think I have the numbers right. I made a couple of adjustments to the vehicle after I ran the spreadsheet. So the total mass is 45.29 tons. Let's fix that. Yeah, I had some extra aerodynamic surfaces on here, which I don't think I need, so I took them away. I'm going to try to fly this directly. So this first one, it's going to empty 2 of these tanks. That's 8 tons of fuel total. So we're going to say starting mass of 45.29 tons, fuel mass of 8 tons. That gives us our dry mass. If we look down below, you see that we have, whoops, only 5 engines. We actually have 7 LVT-45s. Now I'm using the vacuum ISP numbers here. To be fair, I should be using the atmospheric ISP, especially on these first few stages where we're really not going to get up above the atmosphere, but I did the vacuum on the whole thing. That's all right. If we do all of our budgeting based on vacuum and just kind of know that, yeah, down in the lower atmosphere it takes more, we're good. So what this tells us is that we have 610 meters per second of vacuum ISP available. And KSP is telling us we have 527, so that looks good. In fact, let's correct those numbers. LVT-45, the ISP in atmosphere is 280. And the thrust in atmosphere is 188.1. So if I make those corrections, I see that for my first stage, indeed, our available delta V is 533.87 meters per second. I have noticed that my dry mass numbers, I get 37.29 because I know I'm burning 8 tons of fuel. I believe that the engineer's report has a dry mass of the entire vessel drained of fuel. So, yeah, I am not sure where it comes up with this 527 number. I've noticed that even so, if I go back to just looking at the top, the dry masses don't quite line up. So there's something going on where the dry mass of even the last stage doesn't match up with the wet mass minus what I think of as the fuel. And I have emptied out the RCS fuel from the tin can, so we've got no monopropellant, so I know it's not doing that. So I'm wondering if maybe it's treating the heat shield as 2 tons of dry mass. That might be it. Anyway, why can't I get rid of the parts manager? There we go. So now let's go back to the spreadsheet and let's look at the next stage. So if we jettison 2 of these guys, the first 2, then we should have 5 engines firing and 5 of these LVT-800s full of fuel, because we've been packing them with fuel as we go. And we're going to burn 2 more of them out. So let's go to S-4. And again, these masses changed a little bit. Let's correct this one also to be the in-atmosphere numbers. Okay. So this is going to be another 750. So 750 plus 500, that's 1250. That's going to get us up fairly high in the atmosphere. So I'm going to go with the vacuum numbers from here on. But you notice that while I think we've got 5 engines burning, giving us 940 kilonewtons, and we're going to do 8 tons of fuel, and this is going to give us 752 meters per second, KSP has us at 191. Now, previously, when I've seen problems like that, it's because I've got the staging wrong. I think in this case, it's because KSP2 is not taking into account properly all of the fuel linkages. And it thinks that we are nearly out of fuel on the other ones, somehow. Anyway, so that's the 750 from the second stage, so 500 plus from the first, and 750 from the second. We drop 2 more. Oops, no, S3. We're down to 3 engines, 21 tons starting. Going to burn 2 more of them. And there we end up with 100, almost 1500 meters per second of delta V. So yeah, we're getting up there. So 500 and 750 and 1500. Well, that should have us in orbit. So I'm thinking that we are going to arrive on orbit in this configuration, and then we're going to circularize. Now S2 we're going to leave in vacuum numbers, just like we did S3. So S3's got vacuum numbers. It's mostly in vacuum. S2's got vacuum numbers. S2 is just the central core. Now when we stage to it, he's got a full load of fuel. Yay! So he gets his complete full load of fuel that he can fire off even though the engine has been running all along. And that gets us 4 tons of fuel mass and about 9 tons starting mass for delta V of almost 2,000 meters per second. Nice. That should get us circularized. It should even fling us out to the moon. Now, I way overbuilt this. I way overbuilt this craft because I wasn't sure how it was going to come up. But it's kind of fiddly getting all of the fuel connections in. And then our last stage, I just put in an FLT 200, so only a ton of fuel. And I'm using an LV 909, which is our space engine, which is kind of low thrust, but that's okay because it's only pushing 3 tons of stuff around. And this tells me that it has another delta V of another 1300 meters per second, which should be enough to futz around near the moon. You know, I'm not sure how far the S2 stage is going to get us. It may get us into orbit around Mun. It may get us into a transit. I don't know. The last stage should be more than enough to get us out of whatever trouble we get into and to get us headed back to Kerbin and slowed down enough that we can aerobrake and so on. And then, of course, we got our final stage coming in. What's this magnet? Snap. Oh, okay. So, yeah, I can... Oh, I didn't know that. Because normally I just snap parts together along their snap points because that aligns them properly. Apparently we can park them wherever. I wonder if this means I could, for instance, take one of these little ants and just tuck it on. Aw, that's cute. Okay, so you turn off snap and you can basically attach stuff wherever. Cool. Anyway, there's our vehicle. One thing I haven't fiddled with yet is who's going to fly this. Bob's flown once. Let me... I want to fly Valentina on this one. Empty. Let's send Valentina over. So we're starting out with a bunch of Kerbins. That's good. So action groups and trip plan. Oh, trip planner. Okay, so you can say I want to do a round trip to Mun. So this says 3400 delta V to get us into orbit, and then 860 to set up Mun intercept, and 280 to get into a Mun low orbit, and then another 580 to get onto the surface. And then we're just going to reverse the numbers to come back. These numbers are going to be high because once I have... Okay, this is launch to orbit. This is low orbit to exiting SOI. So if we're careful, we can eliminate these last two entirely by exiting the SOI perfectly so that we get a atmospheric capture. So in theory, this total here, this is a powered landing on Kerbin. So first of all, we knock off 3,400 for the fact that we're not going to be powered landing. We may spend 1,000 to deorbit from the circular orbit if we are so foolish as to do the intercept to circular orbit instead of doing the intercept to slightly lower. So 3,400 goes away. Most of the 860 goes away. Call it 4,000 going away, and we really are saying that a land on Mun and come back is about 6,000 dV. And we can carve another 1,000 off of that if we just stay in orbit. So 5,000 dV to orbit. KSP2 thinks this has 4,000 meters per second of delta V. Let's add it up. When I'm looking at my spreadsheet, I see 1,300 plus 1,800. Well, if that was 1,700 and 1,300, that'd be 3,000. 3,000, and there's 4,500. And S4 adds another 750, so 45 to 5250 plus 500 is 5750. Call it 5,500. Well over 5,000 dB meters per second. So I'm not sure what this number is. Maybe it's the, maybe it's if everything was ground atmosphere. It'd be nice to be able to. Oh, I hit launch. Okay. Well, we're launching now. Let me turn off the spreadsheet. And let's launch this puppy. So what I'm going to want to do is get myself into a orbit. One thing I didn't put on my spreadsheet was an estimate of my thrust to weight ratios for each stage. But my intuition is that we are way overpowered. So I'm going to try to go aggressive on my gravity turn. I'm going to get myself tipped over fairly soon. I'm going to keep pushing my nose lower to the horizon than my perigee until I've my prograde, until I've got some stuff going on. And then we'll follow the prograde marker up once we get stable. So here we are. And gotta love this. This is a night launch. This is beautiful. When you look at this, just look at it. Guys, thank you. This is so cool. Okay. So, calm. SAS is on. So we're going to get some stability augmentation. I'm not going to go prograde yet. I'm not going to fight that. And let's do this. Cross fingers. I hope this works. Okay, let's start tipping us over a bit. Our apogee is going up really fast. What kind of acceleration have we got going here? Oh, I blew it. Oh, I've tumbled out of control. Okay. Angle of attack was way too high there. Try this again. Yeah, I could have watched it blow up and started over again, but I want to get to orbit. I want to get to Mun. Okay, same thing. Same thing. Okay, let's get some speed up first. 100 meters per second should be enough. And let's try to hold our angle of attack down to 5 degrees or so, so inside that circle, but just barely. Grade. Yeah, I blew it. Okay, so I could assume that being 10 degrees off was enough to cause a tumble and try to be better on my fingers, or, hear me out here, I could put some additional wings on here, so get some stability going. So let's do that. Aerodynamics. So I've got wings, stabilizers, and control surfaces. So what I want to do is I want to put some control surfaces on the middle that are big enough to give us some control authority. And we want to go 6 wide so that it comes out in the holes. I suppose I could go 3 wide and still get it to come out between them. So 3 wings gives us 3 degrees of freedom, so this should be enough to maintain our control along the various axes. Okay, we know already that if you only have 2, you cannot, you control roll, pitch, or yaw. Choose 2. We've got 3, so we can do this. I'm not sure what happens when the fuel clips through the control surfaces. Oh, let's find out. That's kind of a minimal change. Okay. So, SAS on and launch. Much more controllable. Okay, so I exceeded my 5-degree angle of attack target momentarily, and it didn't tumble. I'm going to get it down to 45 degrees, and then I'm going to just follow prograde. There's the first stage away. Let's go prograde from here. Okay, and the second stage is coming. Oh, and my apoapsis is already way too high. So, yeah, How do I know how much fuel these guys have in them? So here, what I'm seeing is that I don't think these guys jumped all the way up to top out when I staged. I'm wondering if I need more fuel ducts. Hold on. I'm gonna try that launch one more time. And I'm wondering if you need multiple fuel ducts when you're using an asparagus staging thing, or the fuel can't move fast enough. Because I'm really trying to keep all of them topped up. So is there a way... Yeah, okay. So the only fuel display I have is this one. So this time when I stage, I'm going to see if I can pause it real quick. And actually, I want us to take a look at the staging, so we're just going to go straight up. I'm just going to be looking at the staging this time. Yeah, the staging and the fuel. And let me move my picture out of the way of the staging display. There we go. So what happens is, all of the liquids should be drawn down faster on the ones that are sooner to go, but when I jettison them, I jettison the first two, all the others should now show full. Okay, full but with a lower capacity. So, first of all, let's take a look. Let's fix in our mind what the capacity shown is. This is showing that I have 22.4 tons of fuel, of LOX, and 5. Okay, center engine thinks that it has 5.6 tons of liquid fuel and 22.4 tons of oxygen available to it. So after we stage, I expect the top numbers... Well, this guy... Hold on. Some of these guys have more? So these two, which are our first ones to be dismissed, have 3.2 and 8 available. These two have 6.4 and 1.6. Okay. These have 9.6 and 2.4. Okay, that works. And 22 and 5. So 20. So we expect this to work up from the bottom of this list. And when the first two drain, we're going to see if the right-hand number stays stable, then we're good. What I'm used to in KSP1 is that the right-hand number, once I've done with these guys, this 22.4 would go down by this number. So the 22.4 would be reduced by 6.4 to come down to 16.0, I think it is. And it either is going to come down or it's going to stay at 22. Let's take a look. I suppose I could attempt to start the gravity turn. If this works out well, we'll just keep going. Okay, let's start our turn. I really wish I had a flight stick available on this. Okay, the engines at the top are the ones that are going to flame out first. Switching to prograde so I can watch the jettison here. Okay, so the right-hand numbers did come down, and we are not full of fuel. So we are not getting fuel feed the way I had thought. And I actually need to cut my throttle about halfway through that last stage, that stage there. Yeah, see? I think my fuel ducting is, well, it has to be working somehow, otherwise the center engine would have, all the engines would have blown out at the same time. So it is moving fuel. I just don't think it's moving fuel fast enough. And that's kind of a cornerstone of what I want to do here, is to have all of my other stages completely full as we move. I'm wondering if there's a maximum flow rate on those fuel ducts. Okay, so we go back to our fuel area. Fuel tanks. Fuel line. Okay, so the fuel line says, allowing fuel to transfer between tanks. Some critics may call it a glorified fire, whatever. Mass, temperature, and tolerance. It doesn't say that there is a limit on the flow rate. So, either there is a limit, which isn't disclosed, or the fuel display is misleading for some reason. For instance, it's showing the fraction of the original rather than the current. That could be there. Or there's a bug where as the fuel is drained out, it's not properly being stored in the destination. That would be bad. But we're getting pretty good performance. I mean, you saw how high we were getting there on just, our Apple Apsis was being pushed way out with those first couple of stages. That's pretty much on the numbers here. Tell you what, let's add thrust to weight ratios on the spreadsheet real quick, just so I can sanity check myself. So we have a current available thrust of this value here. And what I want to do is equal that divided by my starting mass. So this gives me my acceleration in meters per second. So we're then going to take that and divide it by g. So this says we're going to push 3 g's here. And now we can go to S4. And again, it's 3 g's. This is the way these asparagus staging works, is you end up with about the same acceleration out of each until you get near the end. This is going to be a little over 3 g's. Okay, we're performing a little bit better. And then the center one, we're going to do 2.5 g's out of the center. So this rocket is a little overpowered relative to what I prefer to fly, which is at or just under 2 g's of acceleration. So normally with this kind of thing, what I would do is I would say, well, I can put more stuff on top of this. I could add all sorts of science experiments. I could make a fancier lander. I can put all sorts of things on there. So this is going to be a really good booster stage. It may get augmented in the future with more other things around it, but this looks good. So let's turn off the spreadsheet again, because we're not playing spreadsheets in space. So my hypothesis is that this is a display error, not a simulation error. So let's test that hypothesis. If I can get to orbit comfortably, get circularized comfortably, and have a whole bunch of delta V left over to get out to the Mun and back, then I will believe that my delta V figures from my spreadsheet are correct, and that's actually how it is performing. So, launch. And the gravity turn is going to be... I'm bouncing around on the keyboard, and I'm not very good at flying this with the keyboard, so let's just see how it goes from here. Here we go. Skip the countdown. SAS on. Start dragging my core grade over to 90 degrees. Is hitting 80 now. And I'm just going to touch it up a little bit. Manual throttle just to get us up to 80-ish. Okay. I'm not sure what the gray marks are that are heading upwards. We're not falling. We are not falling. Okay, so next step is to circularize, and I'm going to ignore what it says I have in the way of fuel over here. Oh, I could jettison those guys. Let's move away from those. Yeah, I hauled those last two engines up even though they were empty. I probably wasted a bunch of fuel. Whatever. So according to this, we have 841 delta V available in this stage. And 1200 in the next, and 1300 in the last. Well, the 1300 matches the spreadsheet, and the 1200 doesn't match because I think we may not have refilled this tank properly. So, yeah. What's up with the fuel duct? Anyway, so it's time for us to fire up the engines to circularize. Notice we got down to 20 seconds for our apoapsis here. We got some good strong engines we can hold at 20 seconds before apoapsis. And there's those. Okay, so during circularization, we're losing the last of our onion, of our asparagus. We're holding at 5-4, we're almost at apoapsis, and we're going to be past apoapsis when we finish the circulation maneuver. There's the apoapsis done, and way overshot. But we overshot just as we passed the apoapsis, so that's good. So now we're in this orbit. Now we want to go and I'm going to see if I can get a free return from the moon. KSP thinks that we have about 2,600 Delta V left. That should be more than enough. So, create a maneuver. I want to push my apoapsis out beyond the orbit of the Mun, and I want the Mun to overtake me. Oh, this is working nice. I don't know whether my timing is right or not. Okay. Now I'm thinking that if my SOI entry and exit points up here on the right, if they're farther apart, that means I got more time inside the sphere of influence. And this gets me on the backside, and I want to tune it so my periapsis down here near Kerbal, down the lower right, I want to get that so it's lower than me. In fact, what I want to do, well, we're going to have to tune that separately. I think. I'm not actually sure I've got a retrograde intercept there, because this is coming back higher. There it is. So what if I tune myself to match Mun? Let's go out here where we're not getting a hit, and let's just... Okay, so if we get to the right radius, now let's pick our time. So yeah, all of the intercepts we're getting here at the right radius, we can, well, there we can slam it. These are all prograde. So let's go farther out. That. So I'm looking for something like this. This gets me a free return. And if it's very sensitive to how much I burn. Okay, I like this, because this, if I did it perfectly, would put me on a free return that just grazes the atmosphere, and that makes it very easy to adjust. So we have 10 minutes to start the burn. And what we want to do is point ourselves to the maneuver node. Now, what is this going to do? We are going to head out on this limb here. And we've got an apoapsis here, and we start coming back, and on our way back, the Mun overtakes us. Boom. And we go from here to here, which is our retrograde orbit, and the Mun slightly curves us back in and slightly slows us down. Just not by much, just by that much, that little teeny change in periapsis. And we leave, and we come to here, and we are still, we're not moving as fast as Mun. We're exiting out the backside. And we exit out the backside, moving away from Kerbal just a little bit. We get our apoapsis, and we come right back in. So this is just beautiful. Okay, so rather than waiting 10 minutes, the drill is going to be that we're going to warp to time, and then we're going to wait for the start burn, and this is going to count down for us. So I'm going to hit full throttle. And then it's going to count down how long it thinks we should burn. But I am going to do it based on how well my trajectory matches this outbound trajectory. And it is likely to be a bit confusing. But we can also do some course corrections on the way. Are we ready to go? I think we are ready to go. Warp to maneuver. Hands over the Z and X keys. So I'll do the bulk of the maneuver by doing a full throttle and then a zero throttle when I get close. And then I will just use the throttle with my mouse. Deep breath. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Boom. Okay. I am so glad that we are doing this with SAS, because there's no way I could hold this manually with the keyboard on the maneuver node. Okay, and let's burn a little bit extra to bring ourselves to matching the target, ignoring the rest of the maneuver node crapola. And overshot a little bit. That's okay, that's a small enough overshoot. We can correct that while we're out near Mun. Although if I were doing an autopilot, that would have been a true fail. I should have been running much lower throttle as I got near that point. But you can see our outbound is almost identical. It's too bad I can't flip to retrograde on the burn. What if I put? Now notice that as we rotate, our orbit changes. This is because, I don't know, the orbit is being done based on the movement of the core, not the center of mass. Don't know. Hard to tell. But I'm going to see if I can slow us down just a little bit to try to... Oh, there we go. Okay, and back to prograde. Okay, see if I could just give it a little bit of a bump. Now that was the smallest possible bump I could do from the keyboard. Okay, I'm going to accept that. So if we completely lost control and power, we would get back to Kerbal. Now, we would come in very steep, and we probably would not get slowed down enough for our parachutes, but we would come back. Which Now, for Kerbal, that's good. So now we can take off the burn, and here is the resulting trajectory. And unfortunately, it doesn't show us our transit inside there. I would really like to know what this looks like here. So now what I want to do is time warp out here a bit. Let's take a look at our scenario coming in. So this is our trajectory relative to Kerbin. We're going to come in and we're going to loop and go back out. So this says that we're actually going to make are we actually going to be doing retrograde orbit around the near side? This is a trajectory I hadn't thought about. So maybe what this is going to do is enter here and go around this side of Mun in a retrograde orbit. Of course it has to. Yeah, otherwise it has to be a retrograde orbit. No, we have to come in here though. And if we're going this way, this picks us up. This picks up energy going this. This is interesting. Can I warp to entering SOI? There should be a way to warp to that point. If I right click on it, nothing happens. If I left click on it. So see, this is what I was talking about the moon catching up on us. Notice how we are entering sphere of influence. So, we still have our entire last stage available to us, 1300 Delta V. We could go into orbit around Mun comfortably and get back. We could probably land if I was really good at it, but that's 580 each way. That's going to be 1200 of that. If I were really good, I could land and I could launch, and I could launch myself right out into a trajectory that would go out of the SOI and head back to Kerbin. I am not, alas, that good. What I really want to do right now is warp forward until I'm about to enter SOI. So from out here, oh, I should have looked at this earlier. So yeah, part of what we're getting out of this encounter is it's doing a plane change on us. So we're actually coming in slightly above the center of mass of Mun. So it's going to sling us back out lower. Time warp us up a bit. Okay, and here's our encounter. There we go. So, now that we're in the Mun sphere of influence, you can see how simple this is. And this is Mostly the Mun is catching up with us, so this is just a simple hyperbolic pass. And it only looked weird before because we're doing this plus Mun. So what would it take to circularize at the periapsis? How much delta V is that going to take? Let's see. Going to decelerate until apoapsis and periapsis start swinging around. Okay, so that puts us in that orbit. Whatever it is. So, okay, this is a... hello? How do I tell what burn that is? We've got the burn timer here. Required delta V 278. How long? Well, if I plug that into my spreadsheet, we've got, this is the S2. So let's bring up the spreadsheet, and I'm going to say that we want a delta V of 278 meters per second. So that's a 10-second burn, 278 meters per second. That's going to be half done with the first stage and half done with the second one. So 300 in, 300 out, 600. Okay, we could do this. But I'm going to... I am going to do this maneuver manually. I'm not going to use the maneuver node for it. Boom. Yeah, right. I just have to make sure when I plan my exit maneuver to be very careful that it gets near Kerbin, and then do a correction on the way back that gets me an aero capture. So now, here's where I want to do my thing. The periapsis is in 5719. What I want to do is warp to somewhere like there. This is a couple of minutes before periapsis. That's long enough for us to get our control on. We're in retrograde control. We have a minute and a half to go. Let's go ahead and let this roll forward a bit. I'll do the same thing I did before, trying to hold time to periapsis at 30 seconds. Okay, here we go. Okay, that's overcooked a little bit. I can actually hold it something lower than 30 seconds. Let's bring it down to T-minus 20 seconds from periapsis. Okay, and there we have it. We are now in orbit around Mun, and we need to stage him. So that got us to here, and we still have 1,323 delta V available to us. Yeah, that's nice. So let's Oh, we're paused. We're not. Do I have to stage? I have to stage again to activate the engine, right? So we're actually after periapsis, so I'm just going to have to do this by eye. Now, as periapsis and apoapsis start to swap ends, this leaves one of them above us and one of them below us. So we are somewhere between 223 and 242 kilometers above the surface of Mun. And that gray line is the orbital line for the debris that we just left behind. Default name 9. There's Kerbin. And there's Mun. Oh, that's beautiful. Whee! I left the spreadsheet up, didn't I? Hope that spreadsheet wasn't overlaying anything. Where did I leave it? Yeah, okay, you wouldn't have seen stuff going on the nav ball up here, but nothing was really going on up there. So, we have got an orbit around Mun with 1200 delta V. If I had built a bigger rocket, we could have thought about landing, and I could have destroyed myself on landing and gotten frustrated, because what I really want is to make a successful pass by the moon and come back. So early Apollo program stuff here. We're not going to land, but we are going to get out here. So next step is, how do I deorbit and get back to Kerbin? Well, I want to exit the moon's sphere of influence over there. And I want to exit it with a velocity that's just to the left, going straight out fairly slowly. So let's see if I can design such a maneuver. So where we're going to do it, the problem is this is going to happen at some point future in the orbit. So there we are. So if we are here, this is actually leaving on this part. This is not too bad, actually. If I add a little energy, it leaves sooner. So we want to just tip ourselves out of the orbit. And now I'm going to mess with the time. I'm going to try to mess with the time. Okay, so this leaves me coming as close to Kerbin as possible. What if I try for a little bit more energetic exit? What happens as I go more energy? I can't get lower at a different time. How about that? So a little bit higher energy. There's probably a way to compute this. I probably could just look at how much velocity I want to have leaving the SOI relative to Mun. Work out what my orbit should be, work out what that velocity is, and then work out my orbit that hits that velocity at that distance. But trial and error isn't too bad. Now I do know that it is kind of a fundamental that doing as much maneuvering, much of the maneuver here as possible is the most efficient way to get the capture. So this is still leaving us with a fairly high periapsis. So let's give ourselves a little more exit oomph. Oh, that's working better. That looks like it's the correct time. And now as I adjust my amount of thrust, I can get the periapsis to come down until it just kisses the surface. And I'm going to back it up just a little bit. There. So I don't have any guide on how low that is. But it's pretty low. Now, I noticed that the timing of the burn was critical, and the amount of the burn had a decent effect on what the final periapsis was, but didn't change much. So I should be able to hit this burn automatically, and then adjust it manually at the trailing end to change my orbit after I've done the initial thing. Okay, so let's orient ourselves for the burn. This is in 1 hour and 40 minutes, so we're going to warp to get to there. We will have essentially come in, done an orbit around Mun, and burned out. So we warp. Seconds. 10. 3, 2, 1. Boom. And we are headed for the exit. Well, that's pretty spot on. I'm thinking that if I practice this a bit, I may be able to hit these maneuver nodes decently. Do I want to? If I burn a little bit more, I will bring my periapsis down at Kerbal. I like the fact that I can just middle mouse drag and get it in there. Oh. You know what? I'm not sure which one of these is planned and which one is mine, but those two periapsis points are nice and close. So 120 kilometers up. So this will require a burn to bring it down. Let's see, what happens if I just tap this? Be able to just do this here. Okay, so it's the blue one. I'm just going to bring it right down. See if I can hit. There's 60. Bring it down a little bit more. Not too much. So 55 kilometers. That's 15 kilometers into the atmosphere. It's still fairly high. We should be getting some good aerobraking. it's quite possible this will mean we're going to be doing multiple aerobraking passes, which is perfectly okay, because if you're coming in from a long ways away, you want to get just a little bit of aerobraking. And the next time through, you get a little bit more aerobraking, and so on. And at your apoapsis, you always tune your orbit to get as much aerobraking as you want, and no more, no less. And then only on the last pass do you tweak it to come in nice and deep so that you splat. And hopefully at that point your apoapsis is low enough that your total energy you're dissipating in the atmosphere is low enough that everything is cool and copacetic. And now we can delete the burn. There we go. Because we've now matched it. And we are going to head out and pick this up at the transit. And I am still again disappointed that I can't warp directly to a fixed time before the SOI. Left mouse button does nothing, right mouse button does nothing, middle mouse button is going to do the drag. I don't see any UI elements that are likely to be finer control over time warp, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say time warp me to oh, I can run it up to the end. There. There. Hold on. Second now. Isn't that beautiful? We're just leaving the SOI, and the orbit we're going to enter on is essentially tangent to the SOI that we were in. Fairly close to it. Home to center is back on ourselves. Not quite tangent. Very close though. And we are back in orbit around Kerbin. We have left a stage 3, C stage, whatever it is. I'm going to have to come up with a new stage nomenclature because KSP2 numbers them with the highest number being your parachute, rather than having 0 being the parachute and up. So I may have to call it A, B, and C, and so on. I guess if I'm going to do that, I don't really have to have that line up with the actual stage nomenclature. I can mark it by, you know, what grouping of parts it is. So now I want to warp down until I am entering the atmosphere, basically. It's going to unwarp us when we enter the atmosphere anyway. This says we've got a periapsis at 54. And I don't have any indication of what altitudes there are here, but let's warp down to here. Okay, so zip zip, and we are now go out of map view, and there's Kerbin. We are returning home. And I think that blob right there, I think that's KSC. So if I had big enough, aggressive enough engines, I could break down at this point and just absolutely bring ourselves to a halt. I only have 985 meters per second of delta V, which might not be enough to bring us down next to the Space Center. And besides, there might be problems. Let's go to retrograde. And I'm going to surface retrograde because we are most worried about what happens when we get into atmosphere. I suppose I could burn off the rest of my fuel before we hit atmosphere. And yeah, okay, so at 985 delta V. Yeah, I could just burn off the rest of my fuel and then let air braking handle the rest. Because if I burn now, if I burn close to periapsis, all of my changes will go into reducing the orbital energy at apoapsis, which will reduce the total energy, but won't change my altitude at which I go through the atmosphere. So I'm going to wait until we're down to, say, 80 kilometers, and then burn like a son of a gun. And we would at this point want to burn orbit retrograde, because we are canceling orbital velocity. Close enough. Let's burn the rest of our fuel off. Now it's possible that we have enough fuel that we could actually circularize at this orbit. I hadn't thought of that, because that was a lot of delta V we had available. Okay, so let's just burn the rest of our fuel and see where we land. Okay, so I should have put landing legs on this thing, because we are going to touch down on land, I think. Unless the atmosphere has some very strong opinions otherwise. Now, we are done with this stage. And we want to have SAS hold us surface retrograde, so we have our heat shield pointed into the air. But we may end up in that water up there. So assuming that, well, actually we're coming in, we did a really good job of slowing down. There was a lot more delta V available in that final stage than I thought I was going to have. So, yeah, 2,000 meters per second, and we are still half the atmosphere up. Auto ground, I guess, is where it automatically shifts us to using surface rather than air, but I had it was already on surface. So now all that's left is to pop the chute once we get low and slow. They said 2 kilometers to 20 kilometers, and personally I don't like to pop my chute when I'm above 300 meters per second. Watching the G meter up here, Valentina's got some decent cheese going on. I wish I had a number for that. We see that we are at about halfway. I don't know exactly what that atmosphere meter does, what the scale is. If it's atmospheric density, anyway, so 10 kilometers and 300 meters per second. I'm going to go ahead and pop the chute and let it spool out. It's going to inflate when we get real low, but there we go. It looks like we are in for a water landing. And there is the sunset as we land ourselves in the bay. Looks like a bit to the east. Yeah, the next continent to the east from KSC. So one thing that I would like to do is increase ambient lighting, because the shadows here, it's realistic. I mean, dark is dark, right? But while the shadows are interesting, I would like to be able to see what's going on, and I know that it darkens up when you put it on YouTube. Okay, so we are descending at our 6 to 7 meters per second of descent rate. Got another minute of this. I can start seeing things below me. Those look like little white caps. Have I landed on land? I may. Oh, this is land below me. Yes, I should from now on always have landing gear. We're coming in slow enough. You know, I think 10 meters per second is where you start risking having the heat shield fracture under the impact. So we should be okay slamming down on the heat shield at 6.5 meters per second. Oh, that's water. Okay. Okay, we splash down, and this is something I mentioned this on the previous flight. You land in water, it doesn't float. You just hover at some altitude below the surface of the water, which is moving around and frothing, which is really great. I love their ocean graphics, but it'd be nice if the capsule bobbed along the top of it instead of sitting, you know, it looks like about 3 or 4 meters down. Recovery. Again, recovery is awkward. To recover, I had to go back to the Space Center and recover it from there. I didn't have a button to recover from here. Now, maybe I'm missing something. Object cycling, full control. Okay, yeah, it looks like we have to go back to the... Well, go to flight in progress. This has my revert to launch. It does not have a recovery button. Should be here. So we'd have to go back to the tracking station. And from the tracking station, I got asparagus 1-2 splashed. And I can control it or focus it, or over here I can do recover. So we're splashed down, and we can recover. Now we do have some debris, which I'm going to go ahead and destroy. Don't know whether that successfully destroyed it or not. F/0. What's that? FO. Flight office. Okay, so we are back here. We can focus on KSC. There we go. So that's a successful flyby of Mun. I'm stoked. Um, Nowhere in all of that was there any question about performance issues, and I mentioned on an earlier stream that I had some heating concerns. Um, Looking back at my plots, over the last 3 hours, my temperatures have largely stayed in the 70 to 80 degrees C range. So what I was seeing this morning where I was hitting 100 apparently doesn't happen now. Maybe it's because I reconfigured the graphics, or who knows. But that was nice and smooth. I didn't notice any stuttering. I didn't notice any hitching. I didn't notice the frame rate dropping at any time, even smoothly. It was very controllable. So the one takeaway I've got so far, I will continue to mention this, is that it doesn't recognize my flight stick. And it doesn't let me bind my flight stick and my throttle to be able to control the rockets. So I have to control it from the keyboard or by moving the throttle with my mouse. I can do that. I can move the throttle with the mouse. That's not too hard. Uh, It'd be nice if I had fine-grained control over the throttle while also being able to steer. So, for instance, is there a way to steer with the mouse? That would be cool. If you can't do throttle, can you do mouse steering somehow? Get me my uh, at least my pitch, yaw, and roll somehow hooked up. Maybe one of them is a little weird, but the other two are directly on the mouse. Best case, of course, is to be able to let me bind my flight stick so I can fly this. Anyway, I am going to run back over to KSP1 where I've got some things I've been working on, and it is calling to me. I think my next mission in KSP2 is going to be either to head to Minmus or try a Mun landing. I don't know. Anyway, I've got a good lifting body and a good lifting stage that I can put more stuff on the top of. So we're good. I will pop up a KSP2 stream again when I've got more things in the hopper ready to go. I will see you in KSP1 for a bit.